Hello, 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 and welcome once again to the 108th anniversary celebration of Shiloh Chicago Academy, currently known as Chicago SDA Christian School. We are so proud to have been a part of this tradition of one, the Christian education tradition of the school, but also of the Alumni Association. If you were not aware, my name is Antonia Lewis. I'm the president of the Alumni Association, and this is actually my last term. So if you are interested in serving on our board or interested in taking leadership, if you've seen things that we're doing that you appreciate, or you feel that we could do more and that you can contribute, we invite you to join our team. Please do visit us at shilohchicagoalumni.org and provide your contact information and let us know how you'd like to help support us in our efforts to support our school. Just as a reminder, the Shiloh Chicago Academy Alumni Association, or the SC3A for short, is all about remembering who we are, reconnecting with one another, and reinvesting in those who follow in our footsteps at Chicago SDA Christian School. We are always eager to see how our alums and friends will work together to support us year after year, and we welcome this grand opportunity of this weekend to open the doors for those who want to give of their time, of their energy, of their funds to continue to support our school. Just a little bit about what our school has done for, or rather the Alumni Association has done for our school over the last year. We have contributed to purchasing marketing and recruitment materials to increase our enrollment. We have purchased air conditioners. We've purchased whiteboards and gym equipment and just contributing here and there to the support of our faculty and staff, and also to students who are in need. So those are just a few of the ways that we have invested in our school. We would love to be able to do more, but this is a plug at this time to encourage you to give. If you've given to the school directly, that's absolutely fine. That's what this weekend is all about. But the Alumni Association specifically is charged with hosting this grand event every year, and it takes a lot of work, effort, and funds in order to make it what it is, and even more. So we call on you, our alums, our community, to help. And with that, that is a great segue into the theme of this year, which is Together We Rise, where we focus on building strong and sustainable communities, particularly within the Black community. This is an extension of prior year's themes of self-care and the Black family and social justice. So because we believe that your success is our success, we have dedicated this year to bringing everyone together to brainstorm around ways that we can continue to grow as a community, and by extension, continuing to support our school. So at this time, I'd like to formally welcome you to tonight's event, which is Black Wall Street, Then and Now, where it's a two-part program where we have a presenter, Julian B. Waddell, who is assistant professor and executive director of the Entrepreneurship Center, my apologies, at Oakwood University, and then we will move to the second part of our program, which is a panel of our alumni and our special guest, Danielle McGee, founder and CEO of Black Business Boom. So with that, I will yield the floor to Deidre Willis McLaurin, who will offer our opening prayer.
Hello,
Hello,
everybody.
everybody.
My name
My
is
name is
Monica
Monica
Hetty,
Hetty,
and
and
today
today
I will
I
be
will be
introducing
introducing
the
the
speaker of
speaker
the
of the
hour.
hour.
But
But
prior to
prior to
doing
doing
so,
so,
let us
let us
bow our
bow our
heads for
heads for
prayer.
prayer.
Dear
Dear
gracious
gracious
Heavenly
Heavenly
Father,
Father,
thank
thank
you
you
so
so
much,
much,
Lord, for
Lord, for
allowing us
allowing us
to
to
meet
meet
again.
again.
Our colleagues, our school alumni, Lord, thank you for allowing us just to have another year of coming together and meeting each one another and learning new things about the school and also helping to contribute to the school. Lord, I pray so much today. I pray for our special program this evening, that the program will be a success, Lord, that you will be in it, Lord, and that we will praise your holy name. Thank you in advance. In these blessings, we ask in your name. Amen. I have the privilege today of introducing to you our facilitator for this evening, and his name is Julian B. Waddell. He's a thought leader in cybersecurity and a seasoned startup strategist with a vast array of experience in both fields. That is what most people know about him. What you may not know is that he is a terrible singer and a terrible dancer. But that doesn't stop him from singing embarrassingly loud and at random, while performing dance moves that look differently in his head than it does in real life. He is also a gifted storyteller with a passion for learning little known historical facts. In order to fulfill his passion for entrepreneurial endeavors, he stepped down as the Chief Information Security Officer at Oakwood University to focus on being a professor and an executive director of their entrepreneurship center, OU Launchpad. Well, that's partly true. The more accurate a reason was that he hadn't had time to play video games for years because of his dedication to the job. The moment he realized he had significantly improved his organization's security posture, he knew it was time to dust off the old PS4 and ride off into the sunset. Outside of the awesome games he is currently playing, he is a great business ringman, and he currently has led the initiative to launch a sustainable esports program through the Entrepreneurship Center. Be it pitch deck, a sound business plan, or competitive gaming, Julian works tirelessly to equip his community with the tools they need to be successful in their ventures. So what makes Julian such a good person at what he does? He is empathetic and has great critical thinking strategies. He has 23 years of experience in information security, information technology, and business strategy. He has served as one of the lead technical specialists of the data and rest security encryption initiatives implemented by NASA to increase information security for their users, and his team received national recognition for their efforts. If you ever get an opportunity to meet Julian in person, either ask him to tell you about the epic project he is currently taking on or challenge him to a game of Brawlhalla. Both of these things will make his day. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Julian, who will facilitate the discussion for in the program for this evening. Thank you.
I have to say this. Can you all hear me? Before I get started, I have to say this. If you see me flailing around, it's not me trying to dance. I just noticed there's a wasp in this room, and I've been moving around to make sure I don't get stuck. So if you see that happening, that's not me dancing. That's me trying not to get hit or stung by a bee. Okay, so before we get started, I want to ask you all a question. There was a series of labor and race-related violence in late May, early July of 1917. During that time, 39 to 150 African Americans were killed. 6,000 Black people were left homeless, and the burning and vandalism cost approximately $400,000. That's $8,080,000 in 2021 in property damage. Where did this take place? I'm gonna give a few moments for some comments to say what they think, where it took place. Let me know. I'm gonna tell you. The answer is not Tulsa, actually East St. Louis, Illinois. This is important to show that massacres of Black people in places like Oklahoma, Illinois, Florida, and many more places around the US weren't unique. But that's not what I'm here to talk with you all about today. So I'm going to share my screen so I can pull this PowerPoint up. But before I get started, I'm going to play a video.
Reading Rainbow is launching its Young Writers and Illustrators Awards contest, and once again, we want you to share your adventures with us. This contest is for kids from kindergarten through 3rd grade. We're giving you the opportunity to create your own book and win some great prizes, like a home computer and a printer. So enter Reading Rainbow's Young Writers and Illustrators Awards contest today. I'm looking forward to reading your story soon.
Now, what does LeVar Burton have to do with my connection to Black Wall Street? I'm going to tell you. As was mentioned in my introduction, I'm a professor, executive director of the OU Launchpad Entrepreneurship Center, but I just recently in May wrote a book. That book was called Tales from the Greenwood District. What I did was I focused on life prior to the massacre. The reason why that was so important to me is because I felt that it was necessary to highlight that the people that lived in that city, they had dreams, they had aspirations, and their life wasn't defined by what happened to them. So going back to LeVar Burton, when I was a kid, I've attended church school all of my life. From kindergarten all the way to, not all my life, I would say until the end of my undergrad years at Oakwood University. Now, when I was attending Emmanuel Junior Academy in Mobile, Alabama, one of the things that my mom really instilled in us is that whatever you're going to put inside you mentally, physically, she was really into the health message, really into making sure that everything that we did was educational. And the big top priority of hers was to make sure that the things that we consumed made us better. So she took a page out of Ben Carson's mom's upbringing handbook and was serious about what my brother and I watched on TV, which was primarily PBS. Learning our history was also important, so watching Roots was thrown in there. And then I'm going to throw in Star Trek Next Generation, my dad's favorite show. So as you saw in the video, there was a competition when I was a kid, and that competition was to write a story. It was the Young Illustrator and Authors competition. And when I saw that commercial, the very first thing that I said is, man, I really want LeVar Burton to read my book. So I was going to take the elements from the 3 things that I was able to watch, which was Roots, Reading Rainbow, and Star Trek. And I now had an idea for my future novel. And I knew that in writing this, and this is me as a child, I knew that by writing this, I wanted to be the main hero, the champion in this story. But of course, I had to throw in all the elements that I learned. So the first thought that came to my mind was, I am going to make a story that had science fiction elements, specifically time travel. Of course, if I'm going to be the main protagonist in the story, I needed to learn my history. So I went to my dad. I asked my dad, can you tell me about the history of our family? Because if I'm going to write about it, I want to be detailed. My dad is a long-winded genius. So he went on this tirade about string theory and quantum mechanics and all the things that was going over my head. But finally, he decided to talk about my family and their connection with Oklahoma. He told me that our family left Oklahoma because something traumatic happened in the early 1920s. And that's what led them to relocate to Gary, Indiana. Now, I never finished that book. I never got LeVar Burton to read that book, but that right there in and of itself got me to focus on learning my history. And along with that, it changed how I felt in regards to who I was. I call that thought process the Greenwood state of mind. So today, as we talk, what I'm going to discuss is not only entrepreneurship, not only the historical context of Black Wall Street, but I'm going to talk about how that connects all the way from our early history prior to slavery to now. So entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is defined as the activity of setting up a business or businesses, taking on financial risks in the hope of profit. Now, within the Black community, that can be defined a little bit different. So let me break that down for you. So before the Civil War, African Americans formed small communities to cater to their needs. I recently read that 5 types of social organizations, the church, Masonic lodges, conventions, schools, and the media and press helped develop Black communities. Some states had more communities than others depending on their African American population. So the notion of enslaved people employing the principles of capitalism to accumulate wealth might initially seem odd, considering our legal status as property at the time. Yet, some slaves, under favorable conditions, accrued capital in the form of currency, commodities, and on the rare occasion, real estate for providing essential services to the local populace, either by utilizing their artisanal skills or supplying goods for various trade exchanges. They then used this to start their own small business, mostly selling goods and services among themselves. Now, when you think along the line of skilled enslaved individuals, these people who are taken from Africa, they weren't just taking how it's described as Africans without any abilities or so on and so forth. They were taking our doctors, our boat makers, our geniuses, our scholars. All of these individuals were taken and enslaved. These skilled enslaved arrived with the knowledge of all types of traditional African crafts, pottery making, weaving, basketry, wood carving, metalworking, and building that would prove extremely valuable here in the Americas. This was extremely important, especially during the pre-industrial colonial period when common household goods such as thread, fabric, and soap were all made by hand. After the abolition of slavery and the implementation of the 13th Amendment, the former enslaved made meaningful economic and social gains. That led to the creation of things such as the HBCUs. So following the end of the Civil War and the abolition of slavery, HBCUs were founded throughout the South with support from the Freedmen's Bureau. This was a federal organization that operated during Reconstruction to help former slaves adjust to freedom. Here, African Americans were trained and educated, gaining the necessary knowledge to become teachers and tradesmen. But I want to focus on one thing. So as a professor at Oakwood University, the thought of the saying, enter to learn, depart to serve, that's something that I always connected with Oakwood. But it was actually Mary McLeod Bethune's quote. And it was something that was shared among multiple universities. The reason why that's important to mention is because what these universities were doing, it was they weren't preparing these individuals to enter the workforce. They were training these individuals to be entrepreneurs because they knew that these people post-slavery weren't going to be able to find employment. They had to be able to find self-sustaining. So going back to what I was saying in regards to the Greenwood state of mind, I break it down with these 3 parameters: overcoming, surviving, thriving. And that were those pillars that made the communities of our ancestors all the way to today is something that we've continued to keep with us. So let me go a little bit further. Let's focus on Oklahoma. How does this all connect to Oklahoma? So there was this African-American by the name of E.P. McCabe. E.P. McCabe was born in Troy, New York. When his father died, he left school and he started working. He eventually moved to New York City, and there he worked on Wall Street. Now, like I said, he was born 1850. He wasn't born as a slave. He worked on Wall Street, but it wasn't like that it wasn't like he was working as an equal to the white individuals that were there. He was working as a clerk and a porter in New York. That led him to relocate to Chicago. When he relocated to Chicago, he worked as a clerk, and then he was appointed as clerk to the Cook County, Illinois office in the U.S. Treasury Department. It was here where he had the ambition to create an all-black state. That's extremely important. He wanted to create something that he felt that was needed. He wanted to create something that he knew that would surpass him, that would benefit everyone that he wanted to see overcome adversity. So he became a leading figure in an effort to stimulate a black migration into what was then the territory of Oklahoma, with the hopes of making Oklahoma a majority black state that would be free of white domination that was prevalent through the southern region of the United States. The very first thing that he did was he acquired 320 acres of land, and he called that area Langston. That city was founded with the foundation that African Americans that would relocate there would be able to arrive at a promised land. Now, you don't have to take my word for it, but here's a historian that can tell you a little bit more.
E.P. McCabe, a prominent man in his own right. He had been the state auditor in Kansas, highest elected black official in Kansas, elected in 1882 and 1884. Native New Yorker, saw the opportunity to come to Oklahoma and really had ambitions of having a portion of the Oklahoma Territory carved out as an all-black state. He met with the United States President Benjamin Harrison in 1890. They talked about it. It was considered very seriously. Articles were written about the prospect of an all-black state in newspapers as varied as the New York Times and the Daily Oklahoman. And so there's a lot of commentary and a lot of discussion about this prospect of creating an all-black state. Ultimately, it failed. But in the process, a number of of African Americans came from primarily the southeastern United States, escaping the oppression of the Deep South. Well, I think a number of things led to the failure of the Black state idea. One was simply racism. There was a big fear about allowing, a large enclave of Black folks to be gathered in one place. So these towns proliferated. Some of them were very successful, like Boley. Boley had the nation's first Black-owned bank, first Black-owned telephone company, first federally chartered Black bank, very entrepreneurial community. But a lot of these communities were devastated in the recession and the depression of the late 20s and early 30s, just like many of the small rural white communities were devastated at the same time.
Now, what I want you to realize in that whole development process, although E.P. McCabe was unable to fully realize his vision of creating an all-Black state, it did inspire a lot of individuals, including O.W. Gurley. Now, O.W. Gurley was one of the founding fathers of Black Wall Street. Now, there's something I want you all to do. Before I go any further, whenever I say Black Wall Street, I want you all to type in the comments and say Greenwood. The reason why that's important is because Black Wall Street was dubbed, the Greenwood district was dubbed Black Wall Street by Booker T. Washington, which is great. That's what it was known as. But as you look at the history, it was shown to be something that was, when Booker T. Washington mentioned it, it was drawing parallels to actual Wall Street. But that's not what O.W. Gurley and the early founding fathers named it. They named it Greenwood for one particular reason. Right after the Emancipation Proclamation, we had a period called Reconstruction. And during Reconstruction, African Americans believed that they were going to get their 40 acres and a mule. They believed that life would change, that they would receive opportunities, and they would begin to have access to the American dream. While they were having hope of this happening, that period of Reconstruction did not deliver what was hoped for. So when O.W. Gurley and a few other individuals created Greenwood, the very first thing that they decided to do was to name it Greenwood after Greenwood, Mississippi, where a lot of people were experiencing segregation, racism, and racial violence. And so they wanted to offer those individuals who were the first residents a promised land. That's why it was called Greenwood. And so every time I mention Black Wall Street, I want you all to correct me and say Greenwood. So this was the other founding father. His name was John the Baptist Stratford. Now, John the Baptist Stratford, remember when I mentioned earlier that there were enslaved individuals who had an entrepreneurial mindset? That included the father of John the Baptist Stratford. His name was Julius Caesar Stratford. And he taught his son that now that you're free, now that we're free, we must do everything in our power to take what we've done here and grow. Now, going back to what I was saying about the Greenwood mindset, Greenwood state of mind, this is the epitome of the Greenwood state of mind. It's overcoming, surviving, and transitioning to thriving. So John the Baptist Stratford, he ultimately became the richest Black man in Tulsa. One of the top things that you need to know about this man is that he had a luxurious 54-room hotel called the Stratford Hotel. And alongside O.W. Gurley, which I must mention is from Huntsville, Alabama, was born in Huntsville, Alabama, he and O.W. Gurley created this promised land for people to feel that they have a piece of what America should have been. So let's talk a little bit more about entrepreneurship through Tulsa. So Tulsa in general began to flourish around the turn of the 20th century. And that was thanks to a huge oil boom in Oklahoma. Around 1907, I believe, Oklahoma was producing more than 25% of the oil in the United States. And even though African Americans constituted a small percentage of the overall population in Oklahoma, the percentage of African Americans in Tulsa had significantly increased to around 12.3% during the oil boom. Now, because of racism in that area, there was a lot of things that were meant to hold back African Americans, even though they relocated there. And even though at one point, before Oklahoma became officially a state, African Americans were a greater population than white Americans that relocated to Oklahoma due to the oil boom. But what these entrepreneurs, these Black entrepreneurs decided to do was they decided to create a community of supporting infrastructure type businesses. The Black entrepreneurs created a community of attorneys, real estate agents, doctors, funeral homes, you name it. Everything that would support everyone coming to Tulsa. And with it being Greenwood being a haven for African Americans escaping all types of oppression, this was the place to go. Now, of course, as I mentioned in the very beginning, I don't want to dive too deep into the massacre, but it's important to note that just like when I mentioned earlier about East St. Louis, Illinois, same way that I mentioned about Florida and all of these different enclaves that were attacked, the same thing happened with Tulsa. So the Tulsa massacre began on May 31st is when the lead up to it happened. So Dick Rowland, an entrepreneur who shined shoes, needed to use the restroom, and he worked on the white side of town. And so what he ended up having to do was he had to take an elevator. And as he was taking this elevator, the elevator was not like the elevator these days. It was you needed an elevator operator in order to operate the elevator. So he needed to get on the elevator to go to where the restrooms that he was able to have access to. And Sarah Page, the elevator operator, was startled, not because he was getting onto it, but he tripped up and bumped into her, which made her let out a scream. People heard that scream, and because of all of the situations associated with Black men and their fears of attacking white women that was perpetuated in the white community at that time, Dick Rowland felt that his life was automatically going to be in danger just because Sarah Page screamed. So he runs. The police come. Sarah Page says that's not what happened. She wasn't attacked. However, because he was working on the white side of town, it just got out that this Black man attacked this white woman, and it got into the newspaper. And the newspaper basically pushed that this person needed to be lynched. That led to what was later described as one of the harshest, most terrible forms of racial violence in America. One of. During that time frame, if you look at what was lost in today's in today's resources, it would equal up to $200 million. Over 300 miles of loss, hundreds of businesses were destroyed, thousands of homes was burned to the ground. But still, we survived. Now, from a history standpoint, for the longest, it was called the Tulsa riots. The reason why it was called the Tulsa riots is because by calling it a riot, it was allowed to place blame on the victims. And when it came to insurance claims, none of the entrepreneurs were able to get their claims that they filed seen by the insurance companies and approved. But again, we survived. One of the people that was blamed for inciting this riot was John the Baptist Stratford. So he left, he fled, relocated to Chicago. This right here is the continuation of his legacy. John the Baptist Stratford, when he left for Chicago, he was never able to fully recover all the things that he built in Tulsa. But his legacy continued. His great-grandson, John W. Rogers Jr., he was part of that Stratford lineage. He continued to perpetuate the Greenwood state of mind. I don't know if you all are familiar with John Rogers. I believe you should. Reason being is John Rogers has been recognized as one of the best money managers of the modern era. I mean, he's up there with Warren Buffett and John Templeton. His achievements is an indication of the achievements of Black Wall Street, cut short by the massacre. So in 2014, transitioning to where we are right now, African Americans owned about 2% of US-based companies. This increased to 3.5% in 2017. Why is this important? I'm correlating between growth and how it grows. So what I want to point out to specifically is the fact that in places like DC and New York, Black-owned businesses accounted for about 28% of all businesses in these areas. Same thing with Washington, D.C. When you think about New York, that's 204,093 businesses that were Black-owned. These Black-owned businesses employ more than 920,000 people with a total annual payroll of $23.9 billion just in those two areas. Now let's connect that to having to survive the pandemic, current state. So according to an article by CBS, entrepreneurship thrived in predominantly Black neighborhoods during the COVID-19 pandemic. Research of the number of new businesses formed in Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, New York, Tennessee, Texas, Vermont, and Washington in 2020, when you compare that to 2019, you see a 21% growth. That's 250,000 more new businesses than were created in 2019. This growth can be attributed to the need to support Black-owned businesses following the protests fueled by the Black Lives Matter movement. In addition, most Black-owned businesses were micro-enterprises, which was less likely to be affected by adverse issues like the COVID pandemic. So what is a micro-entrepreneur? Micro-entrepreneur is an entrepreneur that owns a small business that employs less than 5 individuals. That's important to note that when you think of micro-entrepreneur, you can also think about people who also create side hustles. Everyone that's listening, I would bet this if I was I'm not saying betting, but if I was to say that in this hypothetical situation, I'm going to bet, I would say that every single one of you all know at least one person that has a side hustle or something that would constitute a micro enterprise. So since most of these micro enterprises make up, well, let me take a step back. Let me say this. I want you all to know that 92% of the businesses in the United States are micro businesses. I want to be clear there. So 92% of small businesses are micro enterprises. And the majority of businesses that are owned by African Americans are also micro enterprises. Micro enterprises have helped us throughout, from slavery, world wars, Spanish flu, which also happened during the time frame of in the 1918s, where we thrived inside Tulsa. We were able to continue to thrive regardless of what the environment threw at us. So the uncertainty faced, especially with the COVID pandemic, posed a challenge to Black entrepreneurs. This has always happened, but we have always been able to overcome, especially in time of adversity. According to an analysis by the New York Times, small businesses in majority Black and Hispanic neighborhoods historically has had less access to financial resources. That means that even though all of these things are happening, and all these things, I like to equate it to building bricks without straw. We still found a way. And the reason why we found a way is because one of the things that we have in spades is that we make it a point to support each other. That's community. There are a lot of Black leaders in entrepreneurship that still carry the spirit of Black Wall Street, the Greenwood state of mind. From Oprah Winfrey to Robert F. Smith, the list is endless. To fully emulate the Greenwood state of mind is to recognize that communities provide environments where people thrive. The sense of community is also behind the thriving Black-owned businesses during the pandemic. Even with structural and institutional racism, systematic biases that are embedded within our society, we still have figured out a way to continue to overcome, to survive, to thrive. The Black community, yes, we still suffer from systemic issues propagated since the slave trade. And there are still obstacles in our way that are meant to limit us. But breaking down the myths of Black entrepreneurship, the success of Tulsa is a vivid demonstration of the possibilities of building a Black empire through intentional input and support by the community. A century ago, one of the most thriving Black communities in America was burnt to the ground. However, it did not take away our entrepreneurial spirit. The growing Black-owned businesses during these difficult times, especially during COVID, proves that the Greenwood state of mind is everywhere. So I say to you, by adopting the Greenwood state of mind, you are supporting a thriving mentality. You are transitioning from survival mode. And that will take us to greater heights. Embrace the Greenwood state of mind. Thank you. As I mentioned in the very beginning, I wrote a book, Tales from the Greenwood District. I finally made it past the young readers competition, and I finally accomplished writing that book. It doesn't involve time travel, but it does allow you to peek into life right before that massacre and give a little bit of hope, give a little bit of inspiration to show that we are more than the adversity that is thrown at us. If you get a chance, take a time, not to get my book, but to go out and actually research your history, research where you come from, and adopt what's already inside of you, which is that Greenwood state of mind. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Brother Waddell, thank you very much. I don't see any questions coming into the chat. We're going to take a brief intermission, and then we will bring in the other participants. Is that all right?
That's fine.
All righty.
Have to give this presentation.
Thank you.
Hello?
Monica, you're live for the introduction of Nicole.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm here to announce our moderator for the hour today, and that is Nicole Butler. Lots of great things to mention about my friend from high school. We attended Shiloh together and has since then also remained that friendship. So let me go ahead and just start reading her bio. From construction boots to stilettos, the boardroom to the stage, meet Nicole Butler, a Shiloh Academy graduate. Born and raised in Chicago's South Side, she's lived in Washington, D.C., New York City, and Viterbo, Italy. In 2013, Ms. Butler became Chief Executive Officer of her own company, Engaged Properties Group, a design and build residential real estate firm headquartered in the Capitol Hill neighborhood of Washington, D.C. Ms. Butler completed her MBA at University of Maryland in College Park. She then continued on to build an impressive career as a banking executive and accomplished the title Senior Vice President, Global Branding and Marketing. Her experiences spans multi-industries from Department of Health and Human Services during the Clinton administration to corporate banking for companies such as Citibank North America and American Express, and then on to nonprofit industry with the Pentagon Federal Credit Union, PenFed. She has been featured on Lifetime TV's Designing Spaces, featured in American Banker, and listed on Savor Magazine's 100 Most Influential Women in Corporate America. Continuing to defy the odds, Nicole Butler is a professional opera singer. While living and working in New York City, Ms. Butler discovered her love of operatic performance and attended Juilliard School of Music in the evening while working as a banker during the day. From 2011 and 2012, she took a sabbatical and moved to Italy to tour and perform for 1 year. She has performed for the Washington National Opera, at the Kennedy Center, and Carnegie Hall in New York City, just to name a few. Conversational in Italian, knowledgeable in French, German, and Arabic. Ms. Butler has performed for global audiences across the United States, Europe, Africa, and South America. With a heart for global charities, she completed multiple mission trips to Ghana and Tanzania, building libraries, HIV/AIDS clinics, and also orphanages. She currently sits on the board of directors of Rotary Club of Washington, D.C. and Higher Achievement. I would like to introduce to you and turn over today's program to Ms. Nicole Butler. Thank you.
Nicole, you are muted. We need you to unmute your mic.
And so, this is Nicole Butler. Thank you so much, Monica, for introducing me. Very, very excited to participate on this evening's program. We have a very distinguished panel that I am thrilled and delighted and very humbled to be a part of. It always does my heart good to see people and interact with people that I haven't had the opportunity to do so. So with no further ado, I want to make sure that we can bring the panel in and get started in a very robust conversation. If you are a part or watching this panel, this presentation, of course, feel free to provide questions and comments in your chat box so that we can be sure to acknowledge you. It's much more entertaining and much more engaging if you, the audience, participates with us. So with no further ado, I want to make sure that I introduce our panelists. First on the list that I have is George Cartwright, Managing Partner of On the Brink Media Group. George, if you can wave to everyone so that they know who you are, that would be fantastic. Then next we have Paula Fontana, Vice President of Strategic Programming Initiatives for the National Black MBA Association. And I don't want to miss the fact that she graduated class of 1988 and George Cartwright graduated class of 1986. Next, we have Danielle McGee, CEO and founder of the Black Business Boom. We're so excited, Danielle, to have you as a part of this panel. Can't wait to get started with you. Philip Palmer, Chief Financial Officer for the Southwest Regional SDA Conference, as well as Russell Sells, Chief Content Strategist and Executive Integrated Producer of On the Brink Media Group, class of 87. Julian Waddell, of course, everyone just listened to you, and so you're, of course, our featured presenter. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and get started with the questions that we have for our panelists. And really, again, just to tie it into the presentation that we all just watched. The first question, of course, is what legacy did Black Wall Street leave for Black entrepreneurs today? I'd like to start with Paula Fontana. Paula, I think I mentioned to you the other day that the National Black MBA Association was really what helped me to jumpstart my career in banking. And it is a fantastic organization and super important that a lot of people may not know about it. So I'd love to throw this question over to you and have you, of course, take lead on it.
Sure. So glad to be here. So a little bit about our association. So the mission of the association is to provide educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for Blacks throughout all stages of their careers. So as students, professionals, and entrepreneurs. So earlier during the discussion, we heard that Greenwood or Black Wall Street was a lesson in Black prosperity, or a lesson in what could be achieved when we as a people work together for a greater good. And so our association and that those similar organizations, including the HBCUs, really is part of Black Wall Street's legacy. So the fundamentals of our mission are economic development and empowerment, and we do this for all stages of our membership pipeline. So for students, high school students, we provide access to scholarships, insights into career paths, and financial literacy. For undergrads and grad students, we do the same with scholarships and removing financial barriers, providing them access to companies for which that can extend the trajectory of their careers. On top of that, for our entrepreneurs, we provide programming to them as well as access to funding for those people who want to have a different career path than corporate America, for example. So because we realize that entrepreneurship is in fact the greatest equalizer of wealth disparity. So wrapping that all up in a bow, the legacy of Black Wall Street for Black entrepreneurs and for Blacks in general is realizing that together we rise, right? The more we hashtag support Black and the more that we honor our legacy, that legacy of Black Wall Street will continue to go on, realizing that we have a sense of community. So they tried to burn us down, they tried to bury us, not realizing that we are in fact seeds. So that is how the legacy of Black Wall Street continues on.
That's fantastic. And I mean, there was so much in that answer, Paula. It just, makes me excited that the National Black MBA Association, as well as many different organizations, are now making entrepreneurship a part of the formal curriculum because, to your point, that is, one of the major pieces that helps to push not only financial literacy, but just wealth building as a whole. So thank you so much for that. I want to also go into the next question of what, are Black businesses better or worse off today than they were before? What are the advantages or disadvantages that Black businesses own now or have now? And I'd like to ask Danielle McGee, who is CEO and founder of her own business, Black Business Boom. What do you think, Danielle?
Thanks so much, Nicole. I think there are a lot of ways that we are better off and a lot of ways that we still struggle. The biggest thing that I think we're lacking and where we could really, really copy the legacy of Black Wall Street is really the sense of community. And I think that it's really necessary that we start to build communities again to support one another. These days, we're seeing it happen a lot more, but I feel like we're still not quite there where they were with Black Wall Street. I mean, clearly they were actually physically located in the same community. And although we may not be able to be physically located in the same community, we can still build a sense of community. And the great thing is that we have online means to be able to do that. So in that respect, I think that we have a little ways to go. We're not doing as well as they were and really building community to support the businesses. On the flip side, I think that we are using and being very resourceful in our businesses. We're seeing a lot of innovation in Black-owned businesses. We're moving beyond just, opening a brick and mortar business. We're seeing a lot of Black-owned businesses in the tech space. We're seeing us doing business internationally, which is something that you wouldn't have seen as much then. But because of social media, because of the internet, we're able to now have opportunities to grow our businesses and scale our businesses beyond just our neighborhood and our community. So I think in that respect, we are really moving beyond Black Wall Street and growing different types of businesses, which I see as a positive for the Black business community. We still struggle with a lot of things. Again, the community support aspect. I think social media is a gift and a curse for Black-owned businesses. It can be a great gift in helping us to grow our businesses, but it's also the first place that we go to bash our businesses when we don't receive the level of service that we felt like we should have gotten, or we don't like a product or service. We're using social media to the detriment of Black-owned businesses versus really understanding that many times our businesses are disadvantaged and we have to sometimes try again, and give our businesses a second or a third chance for them to get it right. So I think that, again, there are a lot of ways that we are doing better as businesses, but there are a lot of ways, we have a lot of ways to go in a lot of areas with really supporting one another and not having to convince someone to do business with a Black-owned business. And I'll just say this last thing and turn it back over to you, Nicole. But I live in Nashville, Tennessee now. And coming from Chicago, I didn't realize how easy it was to support Black-owned businesses and to not have to go and find Black-owned businesses to support. coming to Nashville, I realized the experience is not the same everywhere throughout the United States. And so there is definitely a disconnect, and I'm sure that's the case around in different places around the country, that there's a disconnect in the support of Black-owned businesses because we don't truly have our communities. So again, I'll leave with that, but I really think that we've come a long way. We're being innovative. I'm seeing businesses grow and scale like crazy and do business internationally and just do really amazing things, raise money and get funding and even become venture capitalists. But we still have a long way to go, I think, in the support of one another and truly building communities that serve our businesses.
Thank you for that, Danielle. Just a quick question, because I think it's super critical that the audience knows who their panelists are. I've given certainly the titles of everyone. In 10 seconds or less, can you just give us a brief of what your business is and where people can find you?
Absolutely. Black Business Boom is a social enterprise. We are supporting digital entrepreneurship in Black communities by providing digital marketing, education, resources, and services for small Black-owned businesses. We try to provide those services and training for Black-owned businesses to really ensure that we're closing that digital divide for our businesses, and we can be found at blackbusinessboom.com.
Boom. Thank you for that. So that's actually a great segue into the next question. And I'll pitch this to George and Russell. Now, you guys are, I believe, co-founders, right, of On the Brink Media Group. And so I'd like for you to answer, the question about the vital elements of starting and scaling a successful Black business. And in what years, I'm adding this part to it, in what years should you tap into a variety of different resources? I know when I initially started the business of Engaged Properties Group, there's so much information out there. Sometimes the challenge is with the access to the information, and then the other challenge is you have too much information, and then trying to determine during what years is this more viable for me to know and tap into in year 1, year 3, or year 7. And sometimes small business owners get stuck in analysis paralysis that they fail to launch, right? And so I'd love for the two of you to just sort of provide your thoughts on vital elements of starting and scaling a business as Black owners.
All right. Well, thank you. It is wonderful to be a part of this panel on the Brink Marketing Group. We have been around in various iterations for a while, and with my business partner, Russell, and various others. But we are a digital marketing agency specializing in multi-location churches and medical practices, but we do have a wide variety of digital services. So to answer the question, in order to really kind of get your business going, and I'll try to weave in an answer to your question in a little bit, but there's about 5 things that you need to do, at least, in this context. You need to have a plan, right? Before you get your business going, before you start, you need to have a plan. And I'd like to say it could be as simple as a 1-page business plan with about 5 things on it that you need to do. Those things are as simple as this. What is your business? And as simple as that sounds, it's important to know what that is. If you are a restaurant, then you're a restaurant, right? But what is your business? And then once you figure that out, you need to have $1 million message. Like, what is your message? But Russ will tell you a little bit more about that. And then what are you selling? Now, those things sound like it's the same. What is your business and what are you selling? But they are actually very different. You are a restaurant, but there are hundreds. I sell Thai food. I'm a restaurant and I sell burgers. I'm a restaurant and I sell fried chicken. I'm a restaurant and I sell. So what is your business? But what are you selling? That's another very important thing. What is your value proposition? Who are you selling it to? I will give you a hint as a marketer. It is not everybody. One, you don't have enough money to reach everybody, and you can't talk to everybody. Like, everybody can't hear what you're saying. So it is not everybody. So who are you selling to? Then where are they? That's very important, right? There's a lot of fish in the ocean, but what fish are you trying to fish out, and where can you find them? That is also very important to targeting your message, to getting it to them, to reaching them, decide how much money you're going to spend to reach them, and those kind of things. So again, what business are you in? What are you selling? Where are the people that you're selling to? Who are you selling to? Where are they? And then finally, how much of whatever it is that you're selling do you need to do these things? Do you need to survive? Do you need to grow and scale, and then to benefit others? And ultimately, the reason that we start businesses is to not just have a job, but to benefit the community at large. And when we talk about the Black businesses and community, we absolutely positively want to benefit our community. And I'm going to throw it over to Russ so that we can kind of keep this short, but we can go on about it. But Russ, if you would just expand on those things for us.
Well, hopefully I don't get frozen. Again, I'm working through some technical challenges, but to be the color commentator on this question, we like to simplify your approach. And that is, think of, as you're starting a business, 3 key elements. Think of the product, the people, and the process. Each are the things that George just talked about, but I'm categorizing them in this. So the product, again, is, say you are a painter. That's great, but what kind of painter are you? Are you a fine artist, or are you do you paint houses? So understand what business you're in. Yes, I'm a painter, but what type? Once you realize, no, I'm not a fine artist, but I paint commercial buildings. So there you go. That's your painter, and that's your product. You paint commercial buildings. Then the people both internally as well externally, in terms of who are you speaking to? Who's your audience? Who are you targeting? So in our scenario of I'm a painter, I need to probably talk to facility managers, business managers, real estate investors of commercial properties. It begins to narrow it down for you, and it's really that simple. And where are these people? Where are your targets? And as was said earlier, I believe Danielle alluded to it, with the digital space that we're in, they're online. So you have to reach them online. And the fact is, not only are you looking for them, they're looking for you. And most of them are looking for you through Google. So one important tool to have is make sure you have your Google My Business account up and ready and going so you can be found. And if you don't know what that is or how to get started, one resource that George and I have for you, you can go and get a free 8 simple step guide to getting your Google My Business up and going. I'll just go to our otbmg.com website and you can grab that for free. But it's important to know how to reach people as they are looking for you. And the third, or the fifth element is, how do you scale? Well, that goes into what type of processes are you putting in place? Even if you are currently a one-person painter or one-person shop, you need to begin documenting how do you do things and the right way of doing them. So as you bring on more people, have a process that works that could then be scaled to not just 2 people or a handful, but many, and then you are really making a dent in, and not only for your business, but for the community at large. So these are very quick, very easy things that you can grasp as part of your one-page business plan. Don't overcomplicate it. Get started. We like to use sometimes the ready, fire, aim approach. Sometimes you spend too much time strategizing and you never launch. So you have to start.
That there was so much goodness in that, George and Russell, just so much goodness. And so, certainly I would say, sometimes, certainly for myself, I felt like in the beginning I jumped off the cliff and grew my wings as I went. So,
exactly.
that's how it happens, right?
Yeah.
Because you learn and you grow, you do different things, you try something, and it doesn't work. You need to readjust, you need to refocus, and then keep it moving. But the most important thing is that you are out there, you're doing it. You have people and resources around you that will help you and guide you, and make use of those people that are mentors and have gone this path before you. So those are important things.
Yeah.
And don't fail to network with people who otherwise you may have thought were your competitors. They're more likely your allies. So definitely network, especially within the Black community. We need each other.
Yeah. I can't say enough about getting a coach. I can't remember the last time I took my corporate coach with me, my executive coach, and I can't remember the last year I didn't have a coach. So, just with people that you respect, who've been where you are, knows, is an expert at it, and just go, which is another reason why this panel is just super important. If you are a member of the audience and you either have your own business, it's doing extremely well, let us know in the chat. You're struggling with it, let us know in the chat. If you have questions, you're sitting in corporate and you're at the desk thinking about, I'd really like to be able to do this, let us know in the chat. These are all distinguished, people who've been in business for a long time. And Paula and Danielle, I also want to tap into you guys, or you two as well, just in terms of resources, as well as Julian and Philip Palmer. What resources are out there and available now that you might want to mention to the audience of people who may be thinking about going into business for themselves? Are there any hot ones that were very meaningful to you?
I'll start off. I'm here in Nashville, as I mentioned, and in Nashville there is a huge entrepreneur support community. But I have learned that many of these resources are nationwide. I would say definitely getting involved with your local SBA office, understanding the resources that they have as well. And usually they have a relationship with SCORE that also has a lot of great, and I know SCORE has a chapter in Chicago that offers a lot of resources and classes. I mean, there are so many online. I'm in a Facebook group that I just love, Traffic Sales and Profits by Lamar Tyler. If you are trying to get your traffic sales and profits up for your business, it's definitely an amazing community, very supportive community. And they do 2 conferences every year that have been virtual. So those have been some really valuable resources for me. I will say that I was shocked coming to Nashville how many resources there were here. It was almost overwhelming. We have incubation centers and entrepreneur center, but I just got online and Googled. Like, Google is my best friend as an entrepreneur. It really is. So I would say to really get out there and see what's in your area and to show up, because many times what I've found is that there are so many resources out here and we're not showing up in the spaces. We have a Nashville Entrepreneur Week. And my first time attending, there was this robust all-day conference, and with all of these different rooms, and there were about 6 Black people. And I know that they were intentional about reaching minorities and getting them to the conference, and it was free, and we didn't show up. And so we have to look for those resources, but also show up for ourselves if we truly want to grow in business.
That was excellent, Danielle. Anyone else want to chime in? Paul, I think I see you biting at the bit.
Yes, so I absolutely would agree with everything that Danielle said. And I would also say lean into those resources that target Blacks specifically. So I know, for example, there's a Russell Center here in Atlanta that is specifically nurtures and has an ecosystem for Blacks. Of course, like I mentioned before, my association, the National Black MBA Association, we have over 40 chapters throughout the United States. And so what you get is that local nurturing, the local development of resources and networking. And I will also say that 14th through the 18th of September, we will be in Chicago. We will have our finals of a pitch competition as well as an entrepreneur networking event. So I encourage you to tap into all of those type of resources. And again, ones that lean into the needs that we have as Black people would be ones that I would encourage you to do so.
What about you, Julian?
Yes.
You're at Oakwood University in entrepreneurship. I know you may have some burning ones that you'd like to share.
Yes, it's like I would start off with our own. We have an entrepreneurship center called OU Launchpad. Now, the thing about OU Launchpad specifically is that we tailor to the stage 0, which is the idea stage. We want to get people where they're thinking about what do they want to start, because a lot of the times I think one of the major hindrances is that a lot of individuals become overwhelmed as they go to the SBA, as they go to school, sometimes as they go to all these different things, because it's like they can't even think about what exactly they may want to tackle before they even get to the point where they're getting a business plan. When we developed the Entrepreneurship Center, we noticed that there were 9 entrepreneurship centers in Huntsville. And so we did a survey and we asked a lot of people in our community, and the very first thing that they said is that the things that they noticed that it was tailored to were individuals who were in the very beginning but a little further along. So a lot of the questions that were asked were, is this company making 50,000 to 100,000? Where is it? And like, how can it scale? Will this be like the next Facebook, Amazon, those type of businesses? And as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, a lot of the times, a lot of the businesses that are being started up are evolving from side hustles. When you think about micro enterprises and micro entrepreneurs, I mentioned that they make up 92% of the businesses in the United States, but you don't see a lot of support that's targeted to micro enterprises. So when you're going there and you're thinking about, man, I create a hair care product, or I cut hair, or I wash cars, it's just me. A lot of the times you would see, I don't really consider that a business. I don't see that as something that I can go to the SBA as, because I am only doing that to make ends meet. But that's what micro enterprises are about. There are those businesses that are less than 5 employees that actually propel us as a country forward. Like I said, they make up 92% of the businesses in the United States. So I would say, don't feel that there isn't someone out there that would help you. Don't feel that what you're doing is not an actual business. Take the thought that I am a micro enterprise. My side hustle is a business, and what I want to do is take that to the next level. One last thing I would add, and this is something that I see that happens a lot in our community, is that the opportunities that are out there, the reason is not because we aren't strong enough, we aren't able to do something that other groups are doing, is that the access to a lot of these opportunities aren't really structured toward the things that we think they're not structured in a way that we think it's best for us. So like I mentioned before, when I'm talking about micro entrepreneurs, when you think that my business won't count, I won't get funding for that. And then when you go to try to get funding to grow your business and you're not told exactly what's needed to transition your business from this sole proprietorship to, say, an LLC, you get this internal pushback that maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I am not at the point where I need to go to take this to the next level. And I think that once that's addressed, and once there are organizations that are highlighted that can help those type of business owners, I think that would help create a stronger foundation for the community that we're trying to build.
Yeah, Julian, that was fantastic. I remember starting off, I was just telling someone the other day, the first year that I was out there, I was not afraid to hustle, make, print things, flyers off of my computer and go across the street to the local grocery store and put them on windshields, and here we are now, going on year 8. And, one of the resources that I, took somebody sort of tapping on my shoulder, once things really, really, really started to scale, and say, wait a minute, who's a part of your team, not in terms of who you employ or who are contracted to work with you, in terms of working under you, but do you have an accountant? Is it now time to put in a different taxing strategy? Do you have an attorney? At what time do you change that entity type, right? Should you now be looking at self-funded IRAs to help you with the taxes? Don't get into tax trouble. So, some of those types of things, especially if you're beginning to scale really fast or you're becoming more mature, year 3, year 5, year 7, those things can really get you into trouble if you don't have a team that's tight enough and you haven't really looked at running that business wholeheartedly so that you aren't hurt when it comes to taxes, etc. So, certainly very critical things when you're getting ready to launch, when you're at ground zero. And then as you're beginning to scale, making sure that you're scaling appropriately and knowing when to bring on additional resources, when to employ, when not to employ, those types of things. So certainly I always tell people that small business ownership is not for the faint at heart. Your mind is sort of never at rest. You're always in your mind thinking about the next sale or the next deal. Philip, I'm coming to you with the next question about what role did or does the Black church have in ensuring the economic sustainability of our Black communities? You are the Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer for Southwest Regional SDA Conference. So we'd love to hear your thoughts about that, and certainly any other items that you wanted to touch on, as we do have a little bit of time, but I want to keep watch on our clock here. Philip?
Sure, appreciate it. In our churches, we have community service ministries, and what I see them meeting the needs of the community, not only in disaster relief, but also to providing other services and ministries that can uphold the community. The church is a safe zone for many, and they come there to receive encouragement, to receive spiritual uplift, but then the church can turn around and provide so many other things to pour into individuals and that particular community so that they can be seen as a resource, as a first place to go to. So it's a critical piece to sustaining our Black communities. And there is a trust factor as well. Individuals trust the church and trust the leaders of the church. And so there are messages that can be given to them, and information about programming and things of that nature that are critical to individuals' sustainability there in the community. We just experienced at our mother church this Sabbath, some of our local community leaders and councilmen to come by. They were honored at our church while Dr. Bird, our president, presented today. And it was an opportunity for some of our popular leaders in the city to come and encourage our individuals about COVID-19 and some other things and other programs that are available. So the church, a significant resource for individuals in that regard. They also, I have witnessed actually in Nashville where I lived before, there was a major United Methodist church there that provided their services, and it was an opportunity for individuals who had businesses to come by and tell them about their business, and to provide encouragement for those who were looking for employment and those who were looking for how to expand their business. So the church is a critical piece because people trust the church and they receive encouragement in a safe zone there.
Anyone else want to? Thank you so much for that, Philip. I mean, that's was such a robust answer. We certainly know the strength of the Black church in supporting our businesses, and then just not only supporting in terms of financially, but also spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. Anyone else want to chime in on? Yes, Julian.
I'll add. So, as I mentioned earlier, in regards to the pillars of what created communities within with communities for us, historically, the church was at the cornerstone. And if you go all the way back to slavery, the reason why that was important is because that was a location where we were able to congregate and actually talk, not just about our spiritual life, but how to transition out of our situation. And so when you think along the line of the importance of the church, of course, you have the spiritual aspect of it, but you have to think about all of the support systems that go along with what the church has to offer. So now when you go all the way through, you think about the different seminars that are offered, the food drives that you see, all of those things, especially in the Black churches, that's something that has been consistent over the years. And that's something that when you think about how can we help somebody move forward, it's not just let's save them by bringing them just to Christ or improving their spiritual life. It's how can we do the exact same thing that Jesus did? Jesus fed. When you think about it from a standpoint of Jesus preaching on the mount and he feeding with the loaves and the fish, he fed and then he preached. So when you think about us and the things that we go through, when you think about the connection to the church, is we need to focus, and we have historically focused on how can we help our community? How can we bring people in to provide this type of assistance that helps our community grow, thrive, survive, and go to the next level?
So I'd like to add a little question. Do we think that our communities or our churches are truly supportive of Black businesses? We have the opportunity to support. We don't have an opportunity to support. What are the I don't want to say pros and cons, but what more can be done? Or are we doing too much, right? What messages do we want to share or questions do we want to ask or suggest in terms of supporting us as Black businesses? Are there thoughts and ideas out there, in terms of the church and supporting Black businesses in the community? George, I'll throw that one to you.
I'm throwing a monkey wrench in here, and I'm going to say this. I'm going to start like this. I think some of our churches, we have to rethink what community is, and I mean that in this way. A lot of us no longer live in the community that we go to church in, right? And so we drive through, like, and that we go pass through and land at church and then drive out and go home and spend our money other places and whatever. And then we think of the area immediately around the church as this place where we can serve, or we want to reach them, at least to have them come into the church, but we don't live there. So I think we have to think about how we service the community, what we think about as community, and how we don't just drive through, worship there, and then leave and go someplace else, right? And so one way to do that is for it to be this hub of information and gathering. And because the internet, we can do this on the internet, and some of those things, there's opportunity for us to be the hub of what is happening in the community that the church is actually in, right? And to help to make those businesses viable that are there, and the people, and educate them in some of those kinds of things. So, we're kind of guilty of that. I see some people shaking their head, but it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
But hasn't this digital space that we're in helped us to expand our community and our reach, right? So I
Yes.
feel like even though COVID threw a monkey wrench in everything, it kind of helped us to go ye therefore, because now we're reaching many more people than we would not have just coming into one building.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think that's been the benefit for us all, even businesses. Like a lot of us had to take our businesses primarily online, but it allowed us to expand our reach, right? And the internet is a beautiful thing in that it levels the playing field. On the other side of your web presence, people don't necessarily know what color you are, like they would when they walk into your business. If they are shopping for widgets and you have the best one and the best story to tell around your product and the best reason why, they don't necessarily know that you're Black, right? And if you have the best service and those things, then you can do more today than in times past. So I think the internet definitely is a benefit to us, and we should be using it to be excellent in all that we do.
Quickly, I just wanted to add, I was blown away when I joined a church here in Nashville, and they had a series on Wednesday evening where they were actually teaching about entrepreneurship. It was actually like a 10-week series. There was a guy from a local bank that was facilitating the training, and it was giving all the fundamentals of business. And although I had been in business for 4 or 5 years, I always take the opportunity to learn more. And it was an amazing series where they were really walking you through marketing, accounting, getting QuickBooks for your business, all of these things that are fundamentals that we don't get. And a lot of times I tell folks I have an MBA, so I thought I could open a business. I majored in management and marketing in undergrad, so I thought I could open a business and I would be all right. And I unfortunately had to learn the hard way, that a lot of the things that have allowed me to grow. But there are so many resources available now, and I think the church is the perfect place to really provide those. You're engaged with your church. You're listening to what they're saying. You're going there to learn. And why not teach about entrepreneurship in the church? I think it's the perfect venue.
I 100% agree with that.
Julian. No, go ahead, Julian.
I won't go too deep, but it's like I've had the exact same experiences here in Huntsville. It's like Pastor Bird, before he left Oakwood, one of the things that you would see is that he would have these events that were tailored to micro entrepreneurs. Same thing with Pastor Snell in First Church. He would have these drives. He would have these workshops. It's like he would treat seminars throughout the week to teach. It's like, because one of the things that you have to think about entrepreneurship, a lot of people, when they first think about entrepreneurship at a simple level, is that they think about the financial risk to make money. But when you change it to think about what problem am I trying to solve, and then you apply that within the realms of the church, you can see that there's a parallel there. Like when you think about Jesus, it's like you don't think about Jesus, the carpenter. You don't think about the disciples, the fishermen, the tax collector. All of these people, they all ran businesses. It's just in regards to the ministry, the people they were talking to, they weren't talking within the church. They were talking to these people who are also running their businesses. You have to think about the system back in Jesus' day. And I applied it within the confines of the Black church. But when you look at it historically, going all the way back, the church has consistently been a support system for business development, because the business, like when you think about business, you're not thinking about, I just want to make this to make rich. I want to do something to support my community. That's what Greenwood. That's what you would see, not just in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You would see that Rosewood, Florida, Wilmington, North Carolina, in Chicago, when all of the individuals were trying to figure out how can we build, as we migrated from the South to the North, how can we build something? It was the churches that helped them get a footing to figure out what we're going to do, because that's where the communication was there.
So there's a question in the chat, and if I want to just take just a minute to answer that, and this can you tell us about the importance of storytelling to a business. I think I mentioned, what's your story and that kind of thing. So there's a couple of parts to having a great story and telling your story, right? The first thing you have to do is you have to kind of hook people with a title, a message, like what is this about? Like, before you can actually tell them your story, but you have to have a good hook, and then you have to be able to tell your story. And typically there are different types of stories that you can tell. Some of them are bridge stories, how I got from here, crossed over troubled waters to here. And so that kind of gives people a reason to follow you, a reason to go on this journey with you. And then after you hook them, tell them your story of, the product that you have and why you have this product, how it got developed, quite possibly. There's, again, a lot of different types of stories that you can tell, but then you have to offer them something, right? Because you're trying to ultimately sell your product. So you have to have a good hook, your story, the story of your product, and then offer it to them and tell them why they need it, essentially. So, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Julian.
I just want to piggyback because that's absolutely right. And I know this is a shameless plug, but when I'm referencing, like, I wrote a book, Tales from the Greenwood District. If you think of that book, it's historical fiction. The reason why I wrote that book specifically, and I wrote it in the tone of historical fiction, is because I wanted to talk about or use storytelling as a way to talk about history, to talk about the building before the massacre. If you notice, this was the 100-year anniversary of the Greenwood District massacre. Everybody talked about the massacre. No one talked about what was lost. No one was talking about what they built. It's like, except as a small side anecdote. So storytelling makes you see something and say, hey, I can do that too. I want that as well. I know where we came from. It brings connection, it brings community, and it makes the person, no matter what the business is, it creates a link, a chain, a connection that makes you want to say, I relate to what you're selling, how you're serving us, so on and so forth. So storytelling is very, very important.
So I want to chime in here because one of the things someone said to me years ago is sort of the WIFM theory, and that's an acronym, WIIFM. What's in it for me? And that's really the customer asking. So, so I always tell people, when you become a business owner, you're always selling or you're always influencing. If you're not, then you have, if not, then you're not acquiring business. And then the question is, do you really have a business? So typically I position a conversation with telling that client or suggesting to that potential client what's in it for them in terms of what I'm offering or what the business is offering, and then get into, why I got into it, if that then becomes important to them. And many times you begin to win their heart, which then means you win their pocket or their dollar in supporting the business. So, sort of that 2-minute pitch, technically sometimes it's not really 2 minutes. You've got 30 seconds to win them over. And then once you have their attention, you can continue on with that piece. So I think there are a few different ways to sort of to offer that up, or to talk to people about what kind of business you have. What is in it for them? What are you offering? How is it better, than your competitor, if you will, or how is it the best out there and why? What makes it special, etc. And then, win the heart if you have that time. As many people are busy, they don't have the time. What's in it for them? It's something I learned years ago, and it takes a little while to really kind of get that down, and then talk about it in a way that's authentic. People don't want to just be sold. They want to know that you are authentically interested in them and you're not just pitching them. So, just wanted to add that piece, because it's, I tell people business really is about selling. Otherwise, you're just volunteering, or you don't really have a business if you can't close a deal. So I wanted to move into another question that we have in terms of early education. I think I saw a question in the chat that mentioned something about this. In what ways should early education prepare our children for entrepreneurship? And Philip, we had you leading this one out. Do you want to give us a couple of minutes on this and your thoughts about that particular question?
Just a few words that, I mean, it's an opportunity for young people to understand that this is an option. There are traditional roles that we came up with, a fireman, a policeman, and so forth. And what we're learning more and more these days is that entrepreneurship is an option. And I think that that's, simply put, that's it, that we need to speak to that. And those who have success in their communities is they address their young people early with resources and then also options. And so we too must do the same thing. We must inform our young people early about all the possible options that are available to them and the resources, and facilitate it, stay with them and track them.
Can I add to that? So I had the privilege as a kid to have the support of my parents for the things I was interested in entrepreneurship. My very first business was just selling candy, right? So that at my church school, and the church school was very, very supportive. But here, let me tell you where I was lucky. I was blessed. I was able to transition and learn from that. And I was encouraged to take not the candy business, but take that mindset, take that energy to turn it into something tangible. My very first business, my very first LLC, I started when I was 10. All of that happened because of the church school that I attended, the encouragement that I got from my parents. I continue to build from that. And that's not just me. That was a lot of individuals that attended my Adventist church school. It was pushed to say that, what type of problem are you trying to solve here? What do you want to do in this world? So the question wasn't asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was, what problem do you want to solve and how do you want to go about doing it? So when you think about entrepreneurship, like, let's think about, like, so I'm also a technical person, right? So let's think about it from that standpoint. When a person wants to build something, it's like, when you think about it from, it's like, when you think about it just at face value, you think if somebody wants to create an app, right? You're already overwhelmed. I don't know how to create an app. But if the question is asked, what problem do I want to solve? And now how do I want to apply technology to that problem and how I solve it? How do I use technology to scale from there? You're now focusing on a problem that I'm solving. When you think about Uber, for instance, Uber isn't a ride-sharing app. Uber addressed a ride-sharing issue and they applied technology to it. Ride-sharing didn't begin with Uber. It just was able to be scaled and technology was able to be applied to a problem that they saw. So I think in education, being able to, especially, and it's like I'm a huge advocate for Christian education. We are able to look and say, how can we be social entrepreneurs? How can we address real change? How can we focus on something that's not just about the financial bottom line, but the social bottom line? How can we make the next generation of business owners do something that really affects change, not just for their family, but for other families, because that's at the core of what they're trying to build. I think that's where the educational piece is most important.
Julian, I'll stick with you with the next question that we have, because it was a fantastic segue into, if we think about, funding Christian education, right?
Yeah.
That is a challenge. And so, as either thinking as business owners or entrepreneurs, et cetera, I think that's not something we would solve tonight, right? But in terms of, if we thought about it as a challenge to be approached, or to continuously build a strategy to solve it and better fund it, what thoughts do you and certainly other people on the panel have about funding a strategy to fund the business of Christian education?
Okay. So one of the things that I can remember when I was a kid is when I attended my church school, Emmanuel Junior Academy. We, just like every other church school, there were different fundraisers to raise money. There was the May Days, there was the orange fruit drives, all those different things. The reason why I remember it is because that was the opportunity where entrepreneurship was really pushed. So if it, instead of it being a focus on let's just raise money, let's turn this into a learning opportunity. Let's turn this into something that you would see that at these church schools that would make the outside individuals that are providing support for these church schools to want to do something to help or assist. And what I mean by that is that all of us are professionals volunteers, and being able to give back not just by saying, "Okay, I'm going to raise money for the schools." A lot of the schools have this. A lot of people can sometimes have the mindset that church schools may not offer the same type of benefits as a public school out there with all of the resources that are there. But if you change the thought of we are all products of education, this type of entrepreneur education, and apply that to our schools and say, we are going to not only provide money, but help them raise money by showing them these entrepreneurial methods. I believe that would help the school have something additional to offer.
That's fantastic, Julian. This is such a critical question. I know that there are others who want to chime in on this. I want to make sure, though, that we are honoring our time. It's now 2 minutes after the hour. I know we started a bit late, but I think at this time it may be appropriate to thank the panel. I'm not sure if there are any other questions out there to be asked, but certainly if there are people in the audience who would like to connect with any of us, I believe all of us have LinkedIn profiles, so search for us there. Go on and send us a message and connect with us. I believe we all have social media accounts. If you're interested, we all have websites. Certainly would love to be an advocate for, mentor, support in any way that any of us possibly can. Those wanting to be entrepreneurs currently are, and in any stage. Antonia, thank you. I see that you have joined us. I have had a fabulous time. So thank you to you, Antonia, for a fabulous weekend.
You are very welcome, and thank you for helping to support this very great weekend. Every one of you all. This is Labor Day weekend, y'all. So it's like you all could be going to barbecues, you could be chilling outside in the fresh air and all of that, but you're here, and I appreciate it because this is what building community is all about. And our church, it should be our church's business and our school's business. And I really appreciate you. So with all of that, once again, thank you to our panelists, our moderator, our featured presenter, Danielle McGee, who joined us from Black Business Boom. Thank you so much. And at this time, we're just going to say a brief prayer and bid everyone adieu. So if you all wouldn't mind bowing your heads, Lord, thank you so much for such a fantastic weekend. You really came down and showed out. We thank you for the gift of life and the gift of gifts and skills that you've allowed us to have in terms of leadership and entrepreneurship. And we want to extend that into our community and build it up so that we can become successful, not only financially, but physically and emotionally and spiritually as well. We want to be whole and complete in your name. And we want to share that benefit also with our school. As we rise, they rise too. So Thank you, Lord, for all of your many blessings. And in Jesus' name, we ask that you be with each presenter here and each family represented. Thank you. In your name, we pray. Amen. You all have a great weekend, a great night. Good night, Shiloh alumni. We love you, and we'll see you next year.